Sure. So I'm Dale Stromberg, and the title of the piece is The Pacifier. And I'd like to read an excerpt now. Things look to get hairy fast. Broken bones, mashed noses, blood. Sometimes people even died in these fights. I could never bear violence. Before I knew it, I was stretching forth my hand, pale blue light dancing from my fingertips. The mass of henchmen inflamed with bloodlust suddenly drooped where they stood. Shoulders slumped, sighs whooshed from lax jaws. Knees wobbled. A few plopped down splay-legged in the road. Some giggled, others hummed cheerful tunes. Everyone was pacified. While the boys went around making orderly arrests, our leader, Sergeant Stomp, stomped into the warehouse to rescue the co-eds, toting wire cutters for the time bomb. The muleteer had hee-hawed off into the distance, certain to make trouble another day. Then Sarge stomped back out to where I was standing, chewing hotly on his cigar. I knew that stomp. The others were glaring at me. The glutton, snapping handcuffs onto a henchman, couldn't contain himself. Why is she still on the team, Sarge? The story is a superhero story, and there's a subgenre of superhero stories where they'll kind of have fun with it. They'll take the whole concept of having superhuman powers and they'll mix that with mundane reality so that you see the superhero, flipping their breakfast eggs with their superpower or something. Or there was that movie, which I forgot what it was called, where the whole family were superheroes with like the mom superhero and the children superhero and everything. So anyway, this is one of those kinds of stories, and it's meant to be fun, but also I hope that it inspires, some interesting ideas as well in the reader. So specifically what it's about is there's this aging superhero. She's at the end of her career, and in the events of the story make her sort of rethink what she always assumed the value of her work was. So it's a story kind of about how you can form an image of yourself which can blind you to the way that other people might be seeing you. Actually, a long time ago, just for the listeners, I'm an old middle-aged guy now, but a long time ago, I must have been maybe a teenager, and I was just wool gathering about having this superpower. What if I could do this, And I think a lot of stories start that way with just idle daydreams. So I thought, this could be a story, so I stuck it in a notebook, but then I never developed it. And then much later, years and years later, I was working through this book of like how to write, like a writing manual. It's by Ursula Le Guin, and it's called Steering the Craft, and it's a really good book. At the end of each chapter, she has these prompts saying, write a story about blah, blah, blah. So the chapter about the present tense and the past tense said, write a story about an old woman doing something in the present, but thinking about something in the past. And so I thought of taking my superhero idea and plugging it into that. So I mashed those together, and I just started writing to see where it would go. This is really an old piece of advice, but I think it's really, really good. It comes from Edgar Allan Poe a long time ago, and Edgar Allan Poe would talk about unity of effect, where he meant that if you're writing a short piece of literature, like a poem or a short story, something that a person could read all at once, it's better, he thought, if everything in the story points towards one effect. So if the story is supposed to make you feel melancholy, then all the little details you choose to put in the story are supposed to be in service of creating that effect. And I don't claim that I can always do this successfully, but I think it's one good way of writing a story. For me, and this is just, I don't think there's any one way to write a story. So just what works for me is, I think that I want to have some idea for a story that I think is fresh. And then I might grab tropes, off of your trope shelf and start applying them and playing with them. For example, the whole idea of the superhero meets sort of boring, mundane reality thing, that's a trope that's already out there. But I didn't say, I want to write one of those. I had to start with an idea that felt fresh to me. And then you can start grabbing tropes and playing with them. For me personally, what wouldn't work is to take a trope and say, I love this trope so much, let's see what I can do with it. For me, that probably is not going to lead to anything interesting. Yes. In fact, and has nothing to do with superheroes, but I just finished reading a short story collection that I thought was really good. And so the title of the collection is Though I Get Home. And it's by the Malaysian author YZ Chin. And the whole book is great. And there were a couple stories in it that really stood out. One was called Just How the Fire Will Burn. Another one was called A Malaysian Man in Mayor Bloomberg's Silicon Alley. And I just felt that this whole collection, all the stories in it, really captured what I mentioned before about unity of effect, where YZ Chin is choosing just like the perfect detail, presented economically, that makes you feel something about, because she's writing about her country, she's writing about her culture, and you end up feeling something from these stories that I don't think you could get if she just sat you down and said, let me explain my country to you. It wouldn't come across. But she puts it in the form of these stories, and you can feel things you wouldn't feel otherwise. And also, it has strong plots. It has strong characters. It isn't one of these like literary fiction. Sometimes nothing happens, but this isn't like that. So every story was great, and I recommend Though I Get Home by YZ Chin. Sure. Well, yeah, same shameless self-promo. Let's see, because I'm coming out with a short fiction collection of my own, and it's coming out in November. And if anybody who reads the story on Samjoko, there's the link to my website at the bottom. If you scroll to the bottom of the story, and from there you can find out about my collection. So please take a look. You might like it. Organizations, yeah. Give money, folks, if you can afford to. I always try to support organizations like Doctors Without Borders, because I think the world is screwed up and we all need to help. So if you don't have enough money to donate and buy my book, you should just donate.